Hello, everyone, and welcome into the 28th episode of Jack's Mailbag, the series where I answer your Gamecock athletics questions. If you have a question you want answered on next week's episode, be sure to drop a comment in the comment section below on this YouTube video, or I'll have a post on the Insiders Forum on GamecockCentral.com where you can ask any and all of your questions that you do have from me. This week, we're going to be answering a few questions regarding South Carolina's 50-7 win over Akron over the weekend. And we'll also be answering a few other football-related questions as we are currently in the bye week right now for the Gamecocks. So without further ado, let's get into our first question of the week from Gamecock 9395, who asks, did DJ Braswell dress out Saturday? So yes, he did dress out on Saturday against Akron. He was on the dress list roster for the Gamecocks, but he did not play a single snap in the game, and that's been the case for this entire season so far through 4 games. I don't believe he's played a single snap at all for the team. However, Shane Beamer did say during his Sunday teleconference that Braswell was one of 2 players, including Mac Walters, to earn Scout Team Offensive Player of the Week for their preparation in helping the Gamecocks get ready for the Zips. And so he is still with the team based on that. And so we'll see what happens. I think it's also important to keep in mind the fact that he hasn't played much at all this year, really, if at all, might just be because of how many guys are in the running back room. I mean, you have Rocket Sanders, who requires a ton of carries. You have Oscar Attaway, Jawarn Howell, Matthew Fuller, Bradley Dunn, guys like that, all in the running back room. Juju McDowell, that are all presumably ahead of him right now. And you go back to last year, South Carolina really didn't have this type of, I guess it's not even an issue. It's just a good problem to have with too many guys at that one spot in the running back room. And last year, it was guys like Mario Anderson, Juju McDowell, DeCarrion Joyner. I mean, towards the end of the season, I know Juju and DK were both pretty banged up and had to miss some time, but that kind of allowed for DJ Braswell to step in and play a little bit. So he didn't have to use his red shirt last year. I think that's going to be the case this year. We'll see what happens. Injuries can always move him up and stuff, but I mean, it's kind of telling the fact that he didn't make the travel roster for the Kentucky game. We'll see what happens in a few weeks with when the team goes to Alabama and Oklahoma and stuff. But I think it's mainly just because there's so many different running backs on the roster that they're probably ahead of him right now. Next question comes from Mr. Fuji, who asks, hi, Jack. Just wondering, I know you keep up with many areas with Gamecock Central. Is there an area that you are focused on more, like women's basketball, baseball, etc.? Yes, so I cover, if you don't know much about what I do on a day-to-day basis, I cover football, men's basketball, and baseball for GamecockCentral.com year-round. And so right now we're in football season, so my focus has been on football, and most of my stories lately have been football-centric and stuff, and that's kind of how it is during one particular season. Eventually, though, I mean, it's starting to ramp up a little bit now, but men's basketball is going to get going here with games starting in November, and obviously we'll have a lot of coverage to come in the preseason and stuff with practice and media availabilities and all that when we get the chance to go. But once crossover season starts to happen is where my time gets split up a little bit, and it does now a little bit too. I mean, fall baseball practice will get going here next week, and there'll certainly be scrimmages to attend and all that. So that's going to kind of happen. So to kind of answer the question, I focus on those 3 sports, but when it comes to, like, do I focus on one more than the other? No, I try to give each sport equal amount of attention. But when it's like right now, I mean, my focus is on football and stuff. But once we get towards crossover season, it becomes a little bit more split up and divvying up, as much time as I can to each sport. But I love doing it, love covering the sports that I do, and I wouldn't trade for anything. It's really awesome. So next question comes from Kay Ferg, who asks, how do you see the class of 2025 shaping up? We are currently ranked in the 30s, or will the staff use the portal to address the majority of the needs? Yeah, so it's a good question. You go look at South Carolina's recruiting rankings on 3. I mean, you could just literally type in South Carolina 2025 recruiting class, and it'll be one of the first links to pull up. The Gamecocks are currently ranked 30th nationally, 13th in the SEC, which really isn't a good number because it may seem like, 13, that's pretty good. But you look at it, they were previously ranked 10th, and now in a conference with 16 teams, you're in the bottom half of in the bottom half of the conference. And so that's not ideal necessarily. And then the class score has even gone down 2 points. I mean, it was at 90 and now it's a little bit over 88. So this program's got a little bit of work to do in terms of recruiting. And I think over the last few weeks, it's obviously been a big time for this football program. I mean, after the Kentucky win, Beamer was saying that there were so many recruits interested in coming to the LSU game after that win. And even before then, there were so many recruits interested and had this game circled on their calendar. But once the Gamecocks beat Kentucky the way they did on national television, and then ESPN's College Game Day announced it was coming to town, and that was going to be a not prime time, but nationally televised game on ABC once again, interest really spiked, according to him. And he also said that there was a point where he had to basically cut off how many recruits could come to the game just because there's a certain cap that is out there, and they couldn't exceed it essentially. So they ran out of room is what I'm trying to get at. And so to answer the question, things seem pretty good right now since the Gamecocks are in a bye week. Beamer did say on his teleconference on Sunday that the staff is going to go out on Thursday and Friday to recruit heavily around the southeast region. Obviously, they'll hit South Carolina pretty heavily, but it's other states like Florida, Alabama, Georgia. I mean, just any state you can really think of around here is pretty much what they're going to be doing. And so that'll be their primary objective, since the final team practice before they come back on Sunday will be tomorrow, which is Wednesday. So the players will have off Thursday until Saturday. Coaches will have off Saturday, and then everyone's back in the building on Sunday getting full speed ahead on Ole Miss. So I do think the class of 2025 right now seems to be fine. I'll be interested to see one particular player, Malik Clark, who, as some of y'all will probably remember, he was a Gamecock target over the summer, and he is an in-state guy from Rock Hill, and he committed to Florida State over the summer. And obviously with the state of how Florida State is looking right now at 1-3, it seems like, I mean, look, Malik is, he won't officially be on campus until next year anyway, since he's a part of the class of 2025. So he's still weighing out his options, it seems like, a little bit. He was at the Carolina-Akron game the other day, and I think that's pretty telling that, in-state guy, maybe he ends up flipping back to Carolina. I'm not sure, but we're going to have to see what happens. That's just something that I thought was pretty interesting. And whatever positions that they need more addressing in certain areas and they didn't get done enough out of the high school ranks, obviously they'll hit pretty hard in the transfer portal. So I expect it to be a good mix of continuing to recruit pretty heavily at the high school levels this week and throughout the rest of the season when they can, because they will have another bye week in the last week of October, I believe. And then National Signing Day will be right around the corner after that. And then the transfer portal opens up, obviously. So I think there's going to be a good balance of who they get and all that stuff, if that makes sense. Next question comes from, it's a few questions here, from F.A. Doc Cock, who says, several special teams questions. First punt, we seem like we wanted to take a delay of game. Why? So to kind of help visualize and illustrate my thoughts on this, I went ahead and looked back at the video and or the tape from the game and broke it down as best I could. So here is my answer to the first question about the delay of game that South Carolina took on the opening possession and why that might be. All right, so you can see here, it's the first drive of the game. South Carolina is 3rd and 7. Ashford dumps out to Rocket Sanders. They come up a yard short. On the broadcast, it said they were at the 34-yard line, meaning South Carolina's own 34-yard line. So Shane Beamer had an important decision here to make. Does he punt the ball or does he go for it? It's 1 yard, and I can understand the sentiment to go for it. Then again, later in the game, Carolina fumbled on a 4th and 1 call and turned the ball over. So it made sense why they decided to take the delay of game here. I mean, obviously they have enough time to punt. I mean, you look at it, it's a lot of time to kick the ball away here. But I think for whatever reason, maybe South Carolina thought about running a fake. I know Shane had said they were going to be aggressive in this game, and obviously they were. But on this particular play, maybe they just thought they were going to run maybe a punt fake, but it just never worked or whatever, but it also could have been as simple as taking a delay game. So kind of hope that answers the first part of the question. Yeah, so like I said, I hope that does answer the first part of the question, FA.cock. And the next part of your question says Akron's first punt, their kicker is on the hash on our side of the field. Juju McDowell lines up on the opposite hash and has zero chance of returning because of where he lined up. Any clue? Yep. So let me I'll break it down best as I can. Here's another clip. All right, we're getting into the second part of this question. You can see Akron's punter is lined up on the hash mark closer to South Carolina's sideline. And he punts, and you can see right over there, Juju McDowell was seemingly lined up on the hash mark closer to Akron's sideline. Now, it could have been something where on tape they just saw that Akron's punter likes to kick the ball to the left a little bit. I'm not sure exactly why, but I mean, you go back and I mean, you can clearly see. I mean, we'll watch this punt again, but I don't know. I'm thinking we never got an indication on that, but I'm guessing they saw something, and I mean, yeah, I don't know because I mean, like he almost touches the ball there. I'm not sure what he was doing there, but maybe that's something that they saw on tape, and he just ended up kicking it to the right. So that might be why. Yeah, and so that I guess it is a great question to ask because it's like, why are you, if you're Juju McDowell, why are you lined up all the way over there instead of maybe a little bit more in the middle, maybe to try and return the ball? Maybe they didn't want to return the ball there. I'm not sure, but that's kind of my best educated guess from a football thinking standpoint as to why that might be. And then we got one more question here from FA.cock who asks, why do we change punt returners? We've done it every game so far. Yeah, so it is another interesting thing to talk about here. Carolina really has been, I guess, rotating is the best word to call it, with who is, returning punts. I mean, in the Akron game, they had three guys out there returning punts at one point or another. Obviously, in the video we just looked at, Juju McDowell was returning a punt. Gage Larvadain returned a punt for 6 yards, and then Jalen Kilgore also returned a punt for 28 yards. So I'm not sure, honestly. Like I'm thinking it might just be because they had so many guys working at punt returner during fall camp when the media was allowed out at practice that maybe they just feel like they have a lot of guys that can go out there and do things. Maybe it just depends on the point in the game. Maybe there's a lot of different reasons. Obviously, I can't give like a definitive answer because it's again that's probably more of like something the team sees, but it is definitely a something to keep in mind and keep an eye on maybe going forward because it's something that continuously keeps happening is that they keep switching out punt returners and stuff to give different looks in my opinion. So good questions though. Thank you so much for asking them. And then next question comes from Stevo Weibo who asks, have you heard anything on Treba Balady? Seems weird he played 0 plays and Josiah Thompson played the full game against Akron. So yeah, so that was something Shane was asked about during his Sunday teleconference. And here's the direct quote, it was more just coach's decision. Nothing against Tree. It was just some other guys who wanted to get in there. Tree's been a little banged up and just wanted to be smart with how we used him. He was available to play. We just wanted to be smart with how we used him last night from a physical standpoint. So that's what Shane said during his teleconference on Sunday. And looking back at Tree's season so far, he hasn't played a lot. I mean, he's only played 23 snaps this year. I believe 21 of them came in that first game of the year against Old Dominion. And then since then, he's only played 2 snaps and hasn't played at all in the last 2 games for the Gamecocks. And obviously, a big reason for that is the fact that Josiah Thompson earned starting tackle jobs opposite of Kason Henry out of camp. And I know Tree was competing for a spot out there like he had been last year when he got, bumped into a starting role against Georgia and then held on to it the rest of the year. But it seems like the fact that something obviously is a little bit up with Tree in terms of his health. Maybe it's not the greatest right now. Maybe he's not 100%, but that is what we've heard from Shane Beamer. And again, he hasn't really been. I don't think he's been on any of the injury reports for SEC games so far that I remember. And so maybe it is just something where here's the thing. I remember Shane talking about this. I can't remember what game it was, but it was pretty recently where he talked about the fact that he got asked, I think during Carolina calls, you can rotate guys during, on the defensive line and stuff. But on the offensive line, you're trying to have a little bit more continuity and consistency with your five guys out there. And look, I know this year hasn't been amazing for either of South Carolina's offensive tackles, but if Tree's not 100%, I mean, why run the risk of getting him hurt for even longer? You know what I mean? So that's my thought process on it. But there's probably more to the story than we currently know right now. And so the last question comes from Silver Spur for Life, who asks, I heard a player from another team the other day said his former coach did not attend practice. Is Beamer at practice every day? So again, I hate to not give a great answer on this, but that's something that, we're not at practice every day. I mean, the media is not allowed to attend practice during the season. However, I will say I'm sure Shane is usually out recruiting when he can. It's probably, it seems like he's at every practice, but I can't give a definitive answer on that just because it's something we don't get to see. So, but I would imagine he seems really heavily involved with this team, obviously, since he has to be as the head coach. So one can imagine he's usually at practice every day, and I don't see why he wouldn't be, unless there's a specific reason to maybe go visit a recruit or something like that, and you can have one of the other guys, run practice. So that is going to do it for all the questions this week. Again, I appreciate all the questions that I get each and every week from you guys. If you have a question you want answered on next week's episode, be sure to drop a comment in the comment section below on this YouTube video. While you're at it, go ahead and give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and be sure to subscribe to our Gamecock Central YouTube page. It is definitely much appreciated. And if you have any other questions you would like answered, be sure to drop a comment on the Insiders Forum on a thread I will post at the beginning of each week on GamecockCentral.com. So that's going to do it for this week's episode. Really appreciate all the questions, and I will see you guys again next week.